Listen, I understand that campaigns are complicated and that sometimes you look at something like a campaign bleeding cash and it looks worse than it is. At the same time, the DeSantis campaign clearly made a decision here that they needed to get out ahead, that they needed to spend that money. And yet the money spent isn't translating into traction in the polls. That seems to me to be the actual issue. I wonder, when you put all of it together, what you make of his current bid for the White House.
Well, it means that he's in real trouble at this stage of the campaign. Alicia, I've worked on 5 presidential campaigns, so I know exactly what's going on, and I can tell you exactly why they hired so many people, and now they're firing so many people on the DeSantis campaign. Some of it is hubris and arrogance, to be quite candid. DeSantis thought he was going to get in this race, and he was going to quickly either catch Trump or be within a couple of points of Trump, and therefore start to build out beyond those early primary states. Look for the big staff towards the Super Tuesday states and elsewhere. But the fact that not only has he not gained any ground, he's lost unprecedented ground, means he's now down to a lean, mean operation. He's got to win Iowa or New Hampshire. If he doesn't win either of those two, he's out of the race. And that burn rate, which means he hired so quickly, so much, and so many, that he's having to pay all of those people high payrolls, means he's not being efficient with his campaign dollars. So he's either going to trim it down and just put it all on Iowa, New Hampshire, or he may be doing what some others are advising him to do, including the former president, which is to look for an off-ramp and try and preserve himself for 2028, because he's taken on a lot of damage in these first 2 months with this epically bad rollout of his.
Yeah, fiscally conservative, except when it comes to their own campaign spending. David Jolly, NBC News, also learned DeSantis is going to turn a lot of his attention to Iowa as his campaign shifts its strategies. A reminder, the last 3 Republicans who won the Iowa caucus, Mike Huckabee, Rick Santorum, Ted Cruz, I don't need to tell our audience this, none of them ever reached the Oval Office. And yet it comports with this DeSantis idea that there has to be an early win. Right? That's clearly how they see it. And yet I don't see the plan to distinguish himself from Donald Trump. If anything, I see a leaning into remaking himself in Donald Trump's image.
Yeah, that's a great point, Alicia. Ron DeSantis, as Ferdinand said, is someone who has dramatically mismanaged his campaign up until this point. He has twice the staff as Donald Trump, but half the money as Donald Trump. He's now 3rd in cash on hand behind Tim Scott. And I think what we're seeing is the limitations of a candidate who has built his entire narrative on cultural populism. And this is right to your question of, so how does he compete against Trump? He is trying to imitate Trump in his brashness and his take no prisoners approach. But Donald Trump has largely owned the new angry economic populism lane in the Republican Party since Trump created that lane in 2016. So DeSantis thought he was being cute or smart by creating the cultural populism lane. But what he's finding out is a lot of voters, including Republicans, want more than just a campaign whose narrative is, I hate gay people. They actually want to hear answers and solutions. And so can he move into Donald Trump's lane and compete with him on economic populism? Probably not. Should he save himself for 28? It might even be too late for that.
Right. And then sort of the split screen that we always come back to, Fernand, is that you have President Biden heading to Pennsylvania this week so that he can highlight his economic agenda. Comes after a series of wins. Inflation has cooled, record job growth under his leadership, continuing to push to forgive student loans. It strikes me that Republicans act as though they want this election to be a, quote, referendum on Joe Biden. But they're not talking about any of these things, right? They're not trying to win on the economy. They're trying to win on a bunch of boogeymen.
Well, this might be like the NBA summer for Joe Biden, because he gets to go around the country dunking on Republicans left and right with all of these massive economic accomplishments, Alicia, that, as you said, the list is long and distinguished. The only thing is, I don't think Americans have understood the scope and the historic record of accomplishment.